If your ACOS keeps climbing no matter what you tweak, you're not alone. Most Amazon sellers keep optimizing the wrong things. That's exactly why they can't control costs. I've managed millions in Amazon ad spend, and after looking at 10,000 plus campaigns, there's 5 steps that consistently lower ACOS without tanking sales volume or stability. Well, everyone is obsessed with lowering ACOS. What they don't realize is that it's not just about cutting ad spend, but it's also about improving efficiency. Bidding less is not the same as bidding smart. In this video, I'll share the exact optimization framework that we use to lower ACOS without hurting sales or bringing down organic rank. Today, we're going to discuss the 5 steps that I take almost whenever I take over an account to make sure that we're lowering the ACOS for that account. There's a lot of material on the internet on how you can lower ACOS and how you can optimize ACOS, but a lot of that is either misleading or it doesn't work that well practically, or it's just not useful. These are 5 steps that I've used over and over and over again across categories, different situations, different ticket sizes, and obviously along with other steps, but these 5 steps have been very strong fundamentals in really helping me lower ACOS across so many categories. Before I move forward, like any of my other sessions, I've put in an example here so you know that you're listening to someone who's actually done it. This is an account that we've applied these same 5 steps in, and we've lowered ACOS for that account while increasing ad sales as well. So you'll see that the ad sales graph has gone up and the ACOS graph has gone from 50s and between 45 to 60 to much closer to 45, while the ad sales has significantly gone up. Now, before I head over to the 5 steps, you need to understand that cutting ACOS really boils down to 3 things. One is you improve ACOS for already running PPC targets, or you reduce targeting and actions that cause high ACOS, or you increase targeting and actions likely to bring good ACOS. So you improve ACOS for already running PPC targets, and then for targets and actions that are causing high ACOS, you cut down on them, you reduce them, and on actions that are likely to bring good ACOS based on, let's say, an existing proof of performance in the account, or based on your analysis, something that is likely to work and bring good ACOS, you increase your targeting and actions towards that. Let's start with number 1. You improve ACOS for already running PPC targets. One thing that you can do to make sure of that is you optimize to be on the best performing placements and running campaigns you plan to keep. Now, if one of these doesn't make sense to you, the points that I'm going to mention under these 3 things, just wait on. I'll explain each one of them as I go further in the video. So you optimize. So on Amazon, there's different ad placements. You show on top of search, you show on rest of search, you show on product detail pages. You want to make sure that you're analyzing your data and you're optimizing your bids so you can be on the best performing, best converting, best ACOS placements in your current campaigns, and that is how you improve ACOS for already running PPC targets. How do you reduce targeting and actions that are causing high ACOS? You cut down wasted ad spend, bringing no orders or very high ACOS orders. So any targets, any ad spend that is massively underperforming compared to the rest of the account's average, you want to cut down on that. Or you spend less during bad performing parts of the day or the week. Pardon the typo here. Now what you do is that you're improving the efficiency of these targets, you're recovering money from the high ACOS parts of the account, that is something that should not be there in the account, and then you're using that money to increase targeting and actions that are likely to bring good ACOS, such as adding a low ACOS hanging fruit campaign structure. If you don't understand what that is, I have an entire video on hanging fruit campaign, so you can watch that, and that's a very elaborate video on how to really implement this into any account. Or you recycle recovered ad spend to better performing or better potential targets. Let's say a campaign that is doing good but could do with more budget, or let's say a keyword very similar to a keyword that is already performing well. So let's say you're doing well on cable management box, large, and you decide to go now on large cable management box, which you weren't targeting before. So cutting ACOS again really boils down to 3 things. You improve ACOS for already running PPC targets, you reduce targeting and actions that cause high ACOS, or you increase targeting and actions likely to bring good ACOS. And I've broken that down into 5 steps. And these are the 5 steps that we are going to discuss in this video. The first action or step that we're going to discuss is placements optimization. Now that obviously falls under improving ACOS for already running PPC targets. Let's understand what placements exactly are. So whenever a customer heads over to Amazon, to search a keyword, they see different placements on Amazon that they can buy from in terms of the advertising spots. So if I head over to a keyword called dishwasher magnet, I see these ads over here which are top of search, and then I see these ads which are rest of search, and then if I click on any of these listings, the sponsored product ads that I see on those listings are product detail page ads. So whenever you run a sponsored products campaign, you can head over to the bid adjustments tab and see which placements are performing good. So for example, if I head over to this campaign, I see that my top of search placement is performing really good, even though it has a higher CPC and a slightly higher ACOS and product detail pages, but my conversion rate is much better than the remaining placements or similar to product pages, but my CTR is much higher, right? If you watched my video on ranking, which should come out the same week, you would know what I'm talking about. But in general, you can basically go and head over to this tab and see how your different placements are performing. So what you want to be doing is, you want to be making sure that you are optimizing towards the placement that is performing the best. So this is data from AdAdvance, which is a very well-known Amazon advertising agency in space that I have taken, which they posted in 2023. So this shows that across Amazon, across the accounts that they're managing, they have top of search with almost a 4 to 5x higher CTR than the remaining placements, or even higher. And they have a conversion rate there that is almost twice as high as rest of search and product pages. Now what this means is that because top of search takes nearly 2 times less clicks to convert, even if you had twice the CPCs on top of search, you would still have the same ROAS or the same ACOS. So ACOS is spend over sales or number of clicks into cost per click, which is the spend basically. Your spend is number of clicks into the cost that you pay per click divided by sales. So if you are paying twice as much per click, but your number of clicks are half, your ACOS would not be higher. But at the same time, you get a much better conversion rate, a much better click-through rate, which are very strong signals to Amazon that this listing can rank good. So this is a pattern that we see across a lot of accounts, that they really ignore placement data. So I have examples from 3 audits that I've done recently. In the first account, top of search has almost twice the CVR compared to the remaining placements, almost 10x or even higher in case of PDP, almost 10x the CTR, almost twice the CVR, and the lowest ACOS, yet it has the least spend compared to rest of search and product detail pages. Then look at the second example. Again, twice the CVR, almost 5x the CTR, and the lowest ACOS, yet it only has 1/3 of the account's spend. Third example, again, more than twice the CVR, more than 10x the CTR, the lowest ACOS, yet it has less than 1/5 the spend in that account from sponsored products. Now another thing that I want you guys to pay attention to is that in the first example, despite having a higher CPC, top of search has a lower ACOS, which means that in this account, for the campaigns that this data has been taken for, you want to be optimizing the bids towards top of search, which means you should be raising the bids and not lowering the bids. Lowering the bids might actually hurt the account. Even in the second case, the higher CPC is actually giving the best conversion rate, the best ACOS, and the best CTR. A lot of sellers just think that lowering ACOS means you lower bids, and what they actually end up doing is that they end up landing on even worse performing placements, and then they start finding an agency that can help them out, when all they need to do is look at their data. So in this account as well, you want to be raising your bids closer to 0.8 and 0.9 instead of staying stuck at 60 cents and 62 cents for about 2/3 your ad spend. In the third account, even though the CPCs are very similar, top of search has less than half the ACOS compared to the remaining 2 placements, which means even if I have twice the CPC here, which is 2.6, at this conversion rate, I would still have a lower ACOS, which is double of 6.91, which should be less than 14%, almost 13.8%. So even if I had $2.6 of a CPC here, I would still have had a 13.8% ACOS, lower than these two, but it would have allowed me to just get these same sales that I'm getting on this 81% of spend going to the remaining two placements at a much better conversion rate, at a much better CTR, leading to much better ranking benefits. Now, this is something that a lot of sellers ignore. So with placement optimizations, you want to really know that lowering bids does not mean lowering ACOS. Your bid changes have to be strategically aligned towards the best performing placements. So optimize your bids in the direction of the best performing placement, which is also often accompanied with high ranking benefit because of the much higher conversion rates and the much higher click-through rates at the best performing placement. Now, you might have an account where top of search might not be the best placement, and that happens as well. This does not mean that you should always optimize towards top of search. Well, in most cases, if your products are good, top of search does end up being one of the best placements across Amazon. But in some cases, top of search will not be the best placement. So you want to make sure that you're looking at your top campaigns, or you're looking at your campaigns in general, and you're optimizing towards the best performing placement. And that could be rest of search, or that could be product pages. So if I go back to this screenshot, for example, product pages are doing as good as top of search. So I basically want to be making sure that I have more of my spend going to top of search and product pages than rest of search. If I had to choose, I would send more of my spend to top of search, mainly because my CTR is better here, even if the conversion rate is just slightly higher than product pages. So make sure that your actions are aligned with your data and not just based on assumptions or just some random PPC management theory that you heard a few years ago that lowering bids means lowering ACOS. That is not true. For example, in this case, you might actually mess up the account by lowering the bids and lowering the CPCs, or even in this account, if you try to lower the CPCs, you might actually end up raising this ACOS up to 45 and 51% as well, because now you have more of your spend not getting top of search, but actually worse performing placements. Now, the second step that you want to take if you want to lower your ACOS is cutting down wasted ad spend. Now, this one is fairly simple. Now, what a lot of sellers keep doing is, and what a lot of lazy agencies or freelancers or in-house resources working for busy sellers keep doing is that they keep spending on targets and search terms that either do not bring any orders at all, or they bring orders at a much higher ACOS than account average. So this is an example that I've taken from one of the audits I did recently, which is, this is an account which has 0 order targets with at least 8 clicks. Now you just have to pick whatever amount of clicks it takes for you to get an order in your account, and you can just take that as the average. So if in an account I see that my average conversion rate is 10%, it means it takes me 10 clicks to get an order. I will set the threshold as 10. In this particular account, it was 8, so I set the threshold as 8 as well. Now this account spends £3,300. Out of that, it has 3% of its ad spend going to 0 order targets with over 8 clicks. So they have 8 clicks and 0 orders. Or it has 5% of its ad spend going to ACOS, high ACOS targets, which is targets with more than twice the account ACOS. So this account had an ACOS of 40%. We took the number as 80%, which is twice as high as the account ACOS. 5% of the account spend is going to targets with twice as high an ACOS as the account average. Number 3, it has 30% of its ad spend going to targets between 50% to 80% ACOS. Now these ones you don't immediately take hard actions on. And then the fourth one is 0 order search terms with over 8 clicks. So this is not targets, this is 0 order search terms. We have 2% of a total ad spend going over there. So in total, you have 8 to 10% of your ad spend in the account that is not contributing much at all. So this is about 8 to 10% of the ad spend, 3, 5, and 2, which contributes about 2% of the account's ad sales or the overall ad sales. This is disappointing. You want to make sure that this 1/10 of your account contributing 1/50th of your account's ad sales is cut away, because you can then use that 10% and invest that in better targets, or targets with better potential, or targets that need that extra money to be able to break through with the ranks. So you don't want to be wasting this money. Now how I do it, which is how I cut the wasted ad spend, is I will negative target the bad search terms with over X clicks, which is whatever the number of clicks it takes to get a sale in that account. I will pause the 0 order targets with over the same number of clicks. And then what I'm going to do is that I'm going to pause the high ACOS targets. And by that, I mean targets that are running at an ACOS that is more than twice as high as the account ACOS. So I can use that spend in a better way. Or I will take a look at a very similar target to this high ACOS target that is performing good. And I'm going to take a look at its placement settings, and I'm going to use that as an inspiration to create this very high ACOS target on those placement settings. Now, I'm not going to go about just recreating all my account targets, such as these 50 to 80% ACOS targets, but those really high ACOS targets, optimizing them within that same campaign to good performance can be really time taking. So they're not really doing me a great service anyway. I might as well just pause them and recreate them at better placement settings inspired from a similar keyword bringing a good ACOS, such as cable management box large has a very high ACOS, but large cable management box has a good ACOS. So I'm going to try and recreate the cable management box large high ACOS keyword at placement settings that my large cable management box good ACOS keyword is running on. And then again, I will mention again that this does not mean that you go about recreating all the 50 to 80% ACOS keywords, but those that have a seriously high ACOS, you can just skip the work of trying to fix them in their current campaign, and you can just do recreation. The third thing, which is adjusting to consistently bad parts of the day or week. Now, in certain accounts, and this doesn't apply to all accounts, but in certain accounts, you will see that there's certain parts of the day that are naturally slower. And by that, I mean consecutive hours of the day that are slower. So that could be the immediate start of the day, or that could be the last 6 hours of a day. Or in certain accounts, the weekends are significantly slower than weekdays, right? So you want to make sure that you're adjusting your ad spend accordingly, and you're just aligning that with those drops at the start of the day or at the end of the week, or however that works in your account. And this is how the data looks. I'll tell you how exactly you can dig out this data. It's not complicated. You don't need to know different analytic tools, and you don't need to know complex stuff. You can just get that done simply using business reports. So for example, I have this data over here where I can see that the first 6 hours of the day bring very few sales, and then the next few hours of the day they start performing normally, and then the end of the day is slow as well. So I see that 11 p.m. to almost 5 a.m. is really slow. It's every single hour is 1 to 2% of the day's sales. Then there's another graph here where I see that the sales and how the daily sales and how they're distributed across different days of the week, and I see that there's no clear pattern here that the weekends are significantly slower. I mean, 13% versus 14% is not that big of a change, right? How do you dig that out? It's actually quite simple. Without making it complex, if you need this data, you go to business reports, you put in a single date, and then you download the hourly data for that date. You just see that in business reports. Then you go back to the previous date, and then the previous date, and then the previous date, and you do that for at least 30 days so you can get this data. Now, if you want this data, what you do is you just set a custom range, and it's going to show you your daily sales, and you can then use that to just go out there and see what day it was on that date and how different days of the week have been performing. So if you're taking out that hourly data for like every single day, and you want to see how that averages out, so you have data for now 30 12 AMs and 31 AMs, and what you do is that you kind of aggregate that. So if you want this data, you want to make sure that your sample size is at least 30 days. And if you're using this, you want to make sure that your sample size is at least 8 weeks for you to have a solid conclusion on how to go about this. So if I had this case, I would just simply make sure that I'm optimizing for these really slow parts of the day, consecutive hours. Now, this does not mean that you go in and you start optimizing for a random slow hour at 10 a.m. But if you see consecutive hours that are slow consistently over more than 30 days, that's proof enough for you to act on it. So now how I use this data is that, let's say, if the first quarter of the day, which is again 25% of the day in terms of time, brings less than 10% of the day's sales, like in the case that we just saw, I like to turn off campaigns during that time so it's concentrated on the remaining part of the day, which brings better returns. So in this case, I see that the first 5 hours bring 7% of the sales, and if I include 11 p.m. to 12 a.m., that's 9% of the sales over 25% of the day, over 6 hours. So that is 25% of the day bringing 9% of the sales, and then each one of the next 3 quarters of the day is bringing somewhere around 30% of sales. So I'm left with 91% of the sales over the remaining remaining 3 quarters of the day, which is 30% sales per quarter of the day. So I don't want to be spending too much money over here. I might as well let my spend run during those hours when I get a much better return and customers are actually buying, to really maximize that. Now I know people will come in, and there's people who will come in and say, oh, but this attribution and stuff. I have been doing this for a long time. I understand how this works, and I'll tell you. If customers are buying more actively during certain hours, attribution and everything factored in, if you're profit sensitive, you're always going to make a lot more money advertising when people are actually buying. Now, people might come in and click your ad at 4 a.m. and they might come back and buy later, but you're still going to make a lot more money just focusing on times and having more campaigns run during times, or having your spend concentrated in times when customers are actually buying. Then you're going to make by advertising during hours where no one is really buying that much, and you're hoping that someone will see it and then come back and buy later, right? So I like to, if the first quarter of the day brings less than 10% of the day sales, I'll turn those campaigns off. If my weekends are 20% slower than weekdays or vice versa, I want to spend 20% less on weekends. So let's say I see that Tuesdays are always 30% slower. I will just spend 30% less on Tuesdays. And I can have that money be spent on a better day, on one of the better performing days of the week, right? So that just really allows me to make sure that my money is flowing with customer behavior and when there's buying, and I'm not trying to sell blankets during summers. Now that is an analogy for you to understand just the timing of your ads as well. The fourth thing, recycling to better targets. Now what we exactly mean by better potential is targets with a high likelihood of bringing profitable ACOS, or targets with a high likelihood of bringing strong organic ranks with low to medium ACOS. Now if they're bringing organic ranks as well, I can let my ACOS tolerance be slightly higher, because they're also going to bring me organic ranks, and then that's going to bring me organic orders as well. So you want to make sure that the money that you had saved from spending less during bad parts of the day or week, or just cutting that wasted ad spend, is now going to better potential targets. And we've defined what those better potential targets are. And some more examples of better potential targets are just lower competition keywords in general, right? So what this does is that these replace that wasted ad spend or that spend during bad parts of the day or week, and that's put instead into targets that will have lower ACOS on the same spend, which again at an account level will just bring us better return and sometimes better ranks too. So for example, if I go back to the wasted ad spend table, I'm going to put this 10% wasted ad spend into better potential targets, and if that starts bringing me better ACOS, I won't be making only 2% ad sales against 10% of my ad spend. I might be making 10% ad sales against 10% of this ad spend, which is going to improve my account's ACOS, right? So this is really crucial. Now, how do you find these better potential targets, right, Huzaifa? You tell me I want to be spending this money on better potential targets, but how do I find them? There's a few ways. Number one, you can look at your ads that are bringing great ACOS and making sure that all similar opportunities are maximized. So if I have a campaign that is doing really good, but its budget doesn't run out through the full day, I want to make sure I give it more budget. Or if it does run through the full day, I want to take a look around and see, are there any similar targets that I could run my ads on? Number two, you start looking at keywords that are ranking well with low to medium ACOS and finding keywords similar to these. Now, focus on the word similar. What do I mean by similar? What I mean is they either share the same root, such as cable management box large versus large cable management box. So if I'm ranking on this keyword, there's no reason why I cannot rank on large cable management box. Or they have a similar level of descriptive intent, such as wooden horse sculpture small versus wooden horse sculpture for home, right? Now, these are both very descriptive keywords. So if I'm ranking well on this, there's no reason that I can't rank on this keyword if this applies to my product as well. Or search volumes can be another indicator of similarity. So if I'm ranking on a 2100 search volume keyword, another keyword with a slightly lower or similar search volume should also be within my spectrum of possibility if I have to rank a keyword. And then the third thing is you just generally find lower competition keywords. So if you don't have any great ads running, or if you don't have any keywords that are ranking well, you can always go in and analyze the keywords that you have available to you and see which one of these are the lowest competition. How do you identify that? I will make a detailed video on that soon, but in general, you want to make sure that you're going and picking other lower competition keywords that you might never have run ads on, even if you don't have proof of performance. I always prefer proof of performance over no proof of performance. So the first type of keywords and the second type of keywords are always going to take a preference over the third type of keywords. But if you don't have enough of the first or the second, you can always go with third. The fifth step that you can take, so that same money that you're recycling to better targets, there's another form of better targets. So I had mentioned lower competition keywords. Another form of lower competition targeting is low ACOS hanging fruit campaigns. Now I uploaded a detailed video on this on my YouTube channel. You can go and check that out. But I'll just summarize what hanging fruit campaigns are for you. If you can't tell by the name, these are campaigns that cast a wide net and catch the hanging fruit ad sale from ad auctions. So these have low bids and are dirt cheap in terms of their CPCs. The CPCs are generally 10 cents to 50 cents. They cast a wide net in terms of impressions and clicks. They catch the hanging fruit ad sales and ad auctions when things are quiet. They're especially effective when multiple of these are stacked together, and there's 50 plus types of these campaigns that you can create. I'll attach the YouTube video link to my hanging fruit video in the description. And it's a great hack that works in many categories. I've attached some examples of hanging fruit campaigns. If you want to see more, you can just head over to my video about hanging fruit campaigns and see how they work, what to make sure of when you're running hanging fruit campaigns, and what type of hanging fruit campaigns can you create. But before we conclude this video, there's a few things that we need to keep in mind when taking these 5 steps. Number 1, we discussed placements. Now, when I'm trying to optimize my campaigns towards the best performing placements, I prefer optimizing my base bids in the direction of the best placements instead of directly using these placement modifiers. So I generally, for a running campaign specifically, will not go in and change the placement modifiers. I'll actually, in this case, it's a bit tough to really optimize towards the best performing placement, so I might have to do that. So I'll just make this 0% and make this 55%. But in general, if it's a campaign where I'm not using any placement modifiers at all, I prefer just playing around with the base bid. So for example, if I see that a better CPC gets me top of search and a lower CPC does not get me top of search, I'll just increase the base bids. I found that in most cases, just increasing the base bids in the direction of the best placements works a lot better than optimizing placement modifiers. But then again, it varies case to case, and in many cases, this might not apply. Number 2, do not try to overdo budget optimization and cutting it off during random hours. So if you have a slow 3 p.m. but all the remaining hours around it do fine, you don't want to just cut down your budget on 3 p.m.s. Only do that budget optimization that I taught you guys in this session if you see consecutive hours underperforming. Number 3, do not just negative target everything. Follow your thresholds strictly. So do not just go in and negative target all the search terms with 1 click or 2 clicks and 0 orders. You want to make sure you have a threshold. 0 orders, but at least this many clicks before I negative target them. If you go too aggressive with it and you just negative target everything with 0 orders, even if it only had 1 or 2 clicks, you're actually going to start killing your campaigns in terms of performance. Number 4, do not pre-negative target your hanging fruit campaigns. I've talked about this in the hanging fruit video as well, but your hanging fruit campaigns, you do not want to put negative targets in them when you've just started running them, when you've just created them. Why? Because their bids are already really restrictive, they're already really dirt cheap, and layering another restrictive factor like negative targeting at the start on top of them can often suffocate them of getting any traffic, and they won't even get any sales. Number 5, do not just cut off or recover ad spend and not utilize it on better targets. So we've talked about you reduce targeting and actions that cause high ACOS, but you don't want to waste it. You want to utilize it on better targets and better opportunities, and that is how your account is going to grow. Number 6, when recycling wasted or recovered spend to new targets, make sure that there is either a clear thought process or a proof of performance behind it. So if I go back to a previous slide, you want to make sure that there's either proof of performance behind them, like the first 2 points, or there's a clear thought process behind them. Do not just randomly recover ad spend and throw that into random campaigns. Make sure there's either a clear thought process or proof of performance behind it, so you can increase the likelihood of that low performing portion of your ad spend actually starting to perform good. So we'll just end this video by going back to the same table that we started with. Cutting your ACOS boils down to 3 things really, and I've broken that down into 5 steps. If you follow these 5 steps religiously and consistently, and you really make sure that you're keeping an eye out for what your account needs optimization towards, and you're listening to the data, there's a very small chance that you won't be able to improve your ACOS. This has worked across many accounts and it works like magic. There's no rocket science here, it's just plain strong fundamentals. If you still have any questions, feel free to drop them down in the comments, and I hope you found this video useful. If you had been trying random tweaks but still couldn't get your ACOS in control, I hope this video helped. At Shark Advertising, which is my company, we build and optimize PPC systems that actually scale profitably. So if you want me or my team to take a look at your account and show you how you can implement this framework, feel free to click the link in the description to book a call with me direct. At the same time, I did post a video recently on a low budget Amazon PPC strategy that actually works in many accounts. So if you're looking to maximize your ROI and scale efficiently even with limited spend, that's definitely a video you want to check out. See you guys on the next video.